Today we're going to talk about boundaries, but we will be doing a video about kink later. We're Beyond Deep.
I'm G.
I'm K. One major misconception is that anything goes. No rules, it's just a free-for-all.
Typically, people have boundaries. In my experience, that's what actually makes polyamory go smoothly.
Second misconception is that adding a new relationship or having more partners diminishes the value of your current relationships. Every relationship and every dynamic has the possibility to bring something different into someone's life.
Know for yourself what your expectations are going into any dynamic. Have as little expectations as possible, then you won't be let down or idealizing certain aspects of your dynamic.
It's sort of like having your own boundaries in mind, knowing already ahead of time what you might feel okay with, you know?
If you know going into something, ooh, I'm attracted to that person and I want to see where this could go. Maybe it'll be sexual, maybe it'll be a friendship. Just being open to the possibility of something like changing from what you might originally think, or knowing what you don't want the relationship to be.
Like, if you're not sure what you want, then be clear about being unsure.
Yeah. Maybe you're just trying to fill the energy out.
Let's be real, you're gonna have expectations in any dynamic, so being really honest about what those expectations are when you're engaging with someone else so that they can know where you're coming from and that you can avoid any kind of miscommunication.
A lot of you might be very curious, how do we do polyamory? What is our deal? We've basically been with people together, and not that we're not open to being with people separately in individual dynamics, or either of us dating someone separately. We're both attracted typically to the same person.
People that we've engaged with have also been attracted to both of us. That's not always going to be the case. We're very similar, but we're also very different. And if G experienced that connection with someone, I don't have to be in it to feel like it's a good thing.
I'm not gonna stand in the way of K exploring their desires with that person. I might feel a little left out, but most likely I'm still gonna want to be that person's friend.
Yeah, and that's another thing with boundaries, is they're always changing, and so the most important thing is to just constantly be checking in with yourself about how you're feeling and checking in with your partners.
And especially if you're in a certain scene, you want to be clear about what your boundaries are going into it. But obviously they can change in the moment. You might not know. Certain feelings might come up that you might not expect. And as long as you're clear in communicating that, maybe that will just help you to figure out what your actual boundary needs to be in that moment.
In a relationship, if you start to have different types of feelings than were already expressed, as your feelings evolve, to make sure that you are checking in with the people and letting them know, so that someone isn't feeling like they're in a certain type of relationship with you, and in your mind, it's a whole other situation. So we mentioned in our introduction video, a lot of people assume that we're monogamous. We get privilege in the world as a couple, and that is mostly how we have presented, and we are legally married. But also at the same time, in our other relationships, we see the lack of privilege that there is. If we're in a relationship with another person, in a triad with them, being out in public together, how we're perceived, versus when we're just the two of us perceived, is very different.
Know that you have that privilege, and how to use that to help to make whoever else is in your dynamic feel more on equal footing with you.
Yeah, that's definitely something we've learned, being in relationships, what that feels like being in a unit with us who are very much a unit in of ourselves, and just that 2 versus 1 kind of energy that can sometimes come up, and trying to navigate that and make it as much when we're connecting with someone, processing as much, all 3 of us or however many of us processing at the same time.
It's a point to not make certain decisions assuming you know what the other person or people are gonna really think about it, without having that discussion with them. Maybe you have separate processing, but at the same time you still will all come together and process.
Yeah. Knowing your privilege definitely helps create safer boundaries for yourself. And also knowing the privilege of the person or people that you're interacting with definitely can influence and shape certain boundaries. You think about how important every relationship is, whether it's romantic or a friendship, and not to like place it on a hierarchy.
In my mind, there's not really a hierarchy of like desire. These different dynamics all have their own special like place in my heart.
Yeah.
Being a Black person and whoever I'm gonna date, like my identity comes into play with the boundaries that I'll like have for myself with other people. And those are certain things that you need to take into account. Your own privilege, your own identity, and how it interacts with the people who you're like in a polyamorous dynamic with. Impart it into your dynamics in a healthy way that's beneficial and empowering to everyone. If you're not all on the same page with how y'all are feeling, things can get very complicated. To say the least.
It can be messy, but the point of boundaries and expressing them is to, minimize the drama. In the beginning of our relationship, I didn't really understand how to be polyamorous. I didn't really understand how to really be in a relationship, and I definitely crossed boundaries. Still trauma there because of that.
Trauma can obviously affect how you define boundaries and how those boundaries play out. And it's very important to take that into account, your mental health.
Having had those experiences, I've learned a lot, and basically know what never to do.
Okay, that was mad years ago. You know what I mean?
It was over a decade ago.
That was a decade ago. What we know now, learning experience of what not to do, has helped us shape what's actually beneficial in a poly dynamic that's actually going to be a healthy dynamic for everyone.
Also, when we first actually started getting with people together, in my mind it was more sort of just a sexual adventure, but I wasn't really prepared for the emotional depth.
To a point when you're poly, you do have an idea of the capacity to change boundaries and be open to different working with different situations, but at the same time there are certain boundaries in your mind that you want to stick to. I am always going to want to fuck with other people, and that's 100% a boundary for me, and it's never going to change.
Yeah, at no point in our relationship would one of us decide that we're gonna be monogamous now.
Certain boundaries in my life do not change, and they're very consistent because those boundaries have more to do with my lifestyle and my general foundation of my being. If you're just diving into polyamory, that's also something you might want to tell someone. Certain feelings are going to come up that you're going to deal with that you may never have dealt with before, and that's important for your partners to know from jump.
It happens, you might meet someone and you have a connection and you want to explore it, even if you know that there's going to be conflict because you don't have the same type of mindset of what type of relationship you really want.
If you're monogamous and you're just accepting your partner, is that really something that you're doing for you, or is it something that you're doing for your partner to stay in the dynamic? Doing certain things just for the sake of someone else is going to lead to conflict down the line. If you're not going to be true to your desires,
that should be kind of in life in general, but that's the fundamental philosophy for me in polyamory is self-fulfillment.
There's just not enough resources to just help you understand what positive polyamorous dynamics are. So when you're first getting into polyamory, I would expect that things could be a little rocky. And that's something that even you should know. When you're first getting into it, don't be discouraged. That doesn't mean, you can't do poly anymore.
It's possible you might get into a relationship with someone and everyone ends up getting hurt, and that's just, it was a learning experience for you.
There's going to be possibly things that you're going to do wrong, and as long as you're staying on the path of your own heart, things will align for you, and boundaries will become more apparent and obvious to everyone. And especially if you're communicating what's in your heart, that's all that you can really ask someone to do.
We're definitely going to be getting into a lot more topics related to polyamory.
If you have questions, definitely let us know.
Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully this video was helpful.
Stay tuned.